All right, greetings from the dark continent. Conscious Caracal here, or Adams van Sail, here to shine a light on the goings on down south. And Happy New Year! 2024 is upon us, or as the Prudentialist posted, you better start believing in 2024. You're in it, or it is upon us, and that's definitely the state of affairs. No guest tonight, but there's definitely a co-host. Some of you that have been subscribers for long will recognize him from previous introductory episodes or the episodes that I start the year with. This Kroppie, and he's not here every episode, just here for the first one of the year, as he was last year. It hasn't gotten much bigger. He's much better behaved now, because my wife started treating him like a naughty horse and made sure that he's now very well behaved. Very hierarchical little creatures, but also very proud. So you have to take a no nonsense approach. But now he's very, very well behaved. All right, I see there's already a lot of people in the chat. Goeienaand, good evening. Nice to see you all. Happy New Year, everyone. Tonight's stream, like I said, it's not going to have a guest. It's just my annual introductory stream to the year where I discuss some of the themes that I think are going to be critical or are going to characterize this year. If I use my mind's eye to look into the future, and then also some of the challenges that I think that lie ahead. Again, apologies for the terrible lighting in true third world South African fashion. My neighborhood is currently experiencing a rolling blackout. So I'm using my cell phone light here to make a little bit of a studio light here for myself. At least I've got Wi-Fi on battery, and at least my my laptop battery as well should last. Let me just make sure that my laptop is on power saving, because we need it to last. All right, and then also maybe I'm going to have to check the brightness level too, make sure this laptop lasts throughout the blackout. All right, as I said, goeienaand everyone, goeie aand en voorspoedige nuwe jaar aan almal. Dankie Gert Jansen van Rensburg. As I said, if you're a loyal old listener of the channel, my co-host here tonight shouldn't be too strange a sight. Say hello, Kroppie. All right. So, like I said, tonight we're talking about some of the themes and things that I think are lying ahead in 2024. If you, the audience, have any questions or comments, please leave them in the live chat. I will address them all, but keep them relevant to the topic of the year ahead, preferably. I would appreciate that. All right. So I think the first thing, and this is a gut feeling, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but my gut feeling is that 2024 is going to be quite the turbulent year, a lot more turbulent geopolitically, also domestically in South Africa, and maybe even if you live in a major Western country, in your country itself. And the reason why I say that is multi reason. Firstly, a lot of elections coming up, and elections, we can differ on how much we believe they impact reality and how much of an influence they have. But election years, no matter what, tend to be a lot more chaotic, a lot more uncertain and turbulent. Some of the elections coming up in 2024, the South African election, no date confirmed yet, very strange. The United States of America election, end of the year, November, early November usually. Then also the Russian election, the Taiwanese election. There was another big one, but I can't remember which one it was. Those are the ones off the top of my head. These are critical geopolitical points. South Africa, even with the crisis in the Red Sea at the moment, never fails to not seize an opportunity. And that's exactly what happened this year as well. A lot of people were posting that meme of return to tradition, return to a trading route that goes around the Cape of Good Hope at the tip of Africa. But that meme has collided quite hard with the reality of modern South Africa, and specifically South Africa under the ANC, and that is a country whose major ports are in total chaos. I mean, they can't take any more load. They're already completely dysfunctional to a large extent. And they, well, maybe dysfunctional is a strong word. They are barely functioning. They are in a state of crisis, would be a better way to describe it. I see here Rainer of Reinier is in die chat. Goeie aand Erns en gaste, voorspoed vir 2024. Yeah, the trials of load shedding, absolutely correct. Greetings and best wishes for 2024 from Africa. Sideliner opinions. Outcome and consequences of wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Yes. Well, I think 2024, I'm not going to make hard predictions when it comes to the end of major conflicts and when they will end or come to a conclusion. But I think there's a good chance that the Ukraine-Russia conflict, there's some type of major development there in regards towards a more resolved state of affairs. And also at the same time, I think there's major geopolitical moves coming in regards to the instability in the Middle East. I don't see that what's going on there dissipating. I think there's going to be escalation. In South Africa, like I said, there's an election year ahead. Now, as Flabase, the chairperson of the Solidarity Movement, always says, there are A factors and B factors. A factors are factors that you have control over. B factors are factors that you have no control over. And the election, to some extent, is a B factor in regards to we don't have total control over the outcome. We, depending on who you ask, you might have very little control over the outcome. But when it comes to next year's election, you know me, I'm not one of those guys that goes into deep predictions of like, on this date, this is going to happen, or this is going to be the outcome of an election. But the two most likely scenarios by far of next year's election is one, the ANC. If you look at the trends of every election, the ANC just about retain their above 50%, or they just dip below 50% and go into coalition with some small party that gives them that just enough to stay in power. A small party that you can pretty much get on your side by promising their leader a ministerial position, something like that. But on that note, as I said earlier with that quote from Flabase, A factors and B factors. The factors that you do have control over, or a large extent of control, is what happens in your immediate vicinity, community, neighborhood, street. And depending on how organized that community is, the level of control varies. You have control over whether you join a neighborhood watch or not. You have control over whether you get involved at your nearest local AfriForum branch or not. You have control over whether you you take part in community-based activities like going to church, going to community markets, going to community forums, or any type of community-based organization going on and doing your contribution there. Let's see here, some chats before we continue. Sideline opinions, yes, 5 new BRICS members. And I think with these new BRICS members, the BRICS nations now encompass the majority of the world's oil-producing nations, and also the Suez Canal and the Cape of Good Hope. So that's, I think, significant. In regards to back to the A factors and the B factors, when it comes to what you have control over, that's where your focus, the majority of your focus needs to be. When it comes to the immediate environment around you, the ways that you can actually make a difference, a tangible difference, and that's getting more involved in your community, getting more organized. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, because I'm actually working on a piece about specifically asymmetric defense tactics in a hostile environment. So what's one of the key themes? Like I said, tonight's stream is not about making a bunch of predictions about the year ahead in regards to what political outcomes. My predictions are going to be limited to specifically the themes that I think are going to be characterizing this year. And secondly, the challenges that I think lie ahead. A major challenge, or let's start with one of the themes first. The major theme this year, and I think I'm applying this in my own life and in my organization, and then also the broader movement that I form part of, and I think the not just in South Africa but the West itself, is the theme of perseverance. So in a positive and a negative way. A positive way in the sense of, in the year past, on a personal level, I achieved a lot of, I had a lot of opportunities, major momentum. I got a promotion to head of public relations at AfriForum, got married, made my first documentary film, did a speech at the United Nations, represented my organization, and other opportunities. And within that context, the best thing you can do then is build on that momentum after having a productive, good year. And I know all of you had achievements and things that you achieved last year. Don't for a second try to tell me you achieved nothing or you didn't get anything done. The key is then to build on that momentum, no matter what you achieved, whether that achievement is a promotion at work, whether that achievement is welcoming a new child into your family, whether that achievement is making new friends, starting an organization or starting a project, finishing a project, a creative endeavor like a book or a piece of music or something that you've written, painted, created, even planting a few trees. I planted my first tree since moving to Pretoria last year. No, was this year. Last year. Got to get my mind in the right gear. That's an achievement. That's something, momentum that you build on. So this year you have to go further. So for example, my achievement of planting my first tree in Pretoria last year, this year I'm going to plant 2 trees. In regards to writing, I did a lot of writing that I'm very proud of last year, and this year I'm going to build on that momentum. I'm going to persevere in that regard. But firstly, the perseverance in a positive sense and holding momentum. In a negative sense, perseverance in regards to persevering through turbulence and challenges. I really do think, and I don't like foreseeing this or having this gut feeling, but I think 2024 is going to be a very turbulent year. It's going to be a year full of a lot of disruption, a lot of chaos, a lot of major change, but disruptive change. And the best thing you can do in that regard is to persevere through those tough times. Take a lot of inspiration from the past. Yeah, sideline opinions. I share your feeling. It's a gut feeling. It's not something that I've built a lot of graphs and then that inform me that it's going to be a tough year. But I got this gut feeling it's going to be a tough year. RJ says, Conscious Character, I have a real admiration for you and the work you do. I'm hoping to see much more this year. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you very much, RJ. I really appreciate it. But like I said, you have to take stock of your achievements and what you got done in 2023, no matter what it was, what you got done, and then you plan for the year ahead, how you're going to hold that momentum and build on that momentum, because that's what I'm going to be doing. That's going to be my focus personally in my work, in my marriage, in my community. And as I said, that feeling of it's going to be a chaotic or turbulent year means you have a responsibility, we all do, to be pillars of support in our communities and for those important to us, in our families, in our friend circles, to anyone close to us. We have to be pillars of support. Often, I think taking the responsibility of making the tough decisions. I think another theme in the sense of specifically Afrikaners in South Africa, I think again the question and the movement, the solidarity movement, and all the associated organizations and projects. I think another theme that I want to focus on in my writing specifically is the idea of identity. I think a lot of us just write off issues of identity as self-explanatory, as in Afrikaans you'd say vanselfsprekend, as a given. Questions like, who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And just thinking, everyone knows the answer to those questions. I don't think everyone does. I think very few people do, if pressed on it. And I want to help people come to conclusions in regards to, and come to answers in regards to those questions. But in the year ahead, writing about identity, who are we? Who am I? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Especially in the context of Afrikaners. But again, when it comes to these questions of where do we come from, who are we, and where are we going, you can't find these answers in a textbook and then just memorize them and parrot them. They have to come from the heart. The answers you have to formulate in your own words. You have to speak from the heart when answering them. You can't just hear what I'm saying on a stream or what some person is writing in a book, or some commentator that you like. Hey, some commentator that you like said this is what it means, and then you just parrot that. That's not enough. You have to be able to, in your words, articulate the answers to those questions. And I want to contribute to the deeper conversation surrounding those questions among Afrikaners. That was actually the theme of my Day of the Vow speech that I did at Wilgefontein. It was a major honor. I focused specifically on those questions. Yeah. Jack Stander say, indeed, another year of vastbyt in Aanhang. Absolutely. Yeah. And the Roosters says, indeed, across the globe, there will be many challenges to overcome. That's my feeling as well. All right. Then also on the topic of momentum, I think 2023, not just on a personal note, but within conservative or right side of the spectrum circles, more on the less mainstream side when it comes to commentary and writing, there's not really a label for it, but anyway, there's been a lot of breakthroughs in 2023, a lot of new publications, new initiatives, new projects, art exhibitions. I've talked to many people behind these types of projects on this channel, and it's amazing to see. Just some examples, for example, the basket weaving projects by someone like Dave Green, the Skildings events, the exhibitions by people like excuse me, exhibitions by people like Fender Villiers, Pharaoh, a lot of people that I've talked to on this channel, art exhibitions, and just projects like the Old Glory Club and etc. Then in South Africa, a lot of new projects by organizations like the organization I work for, AfriForum, the Solidarity Movement, a lot of civil society organizations establishing new institutions, laying the groundwork for them. And this type of momentum really necessitates and deserves to be held and then to be built on in 2024. More projects, more exhibitions, more initiatives, more publications. Publications like I Am 1776 reaching new heights, a publication that I've written for. And yeah, I think that's a theme that we can all contribute to in 2024, is to support those types of projects. When you see people doing community-based projects or projects that you like the principles of and that you like to see, support them, share their work, financially support them if you can, get involved if you can, and help create alternative centers of order and influence, especially cultural influence. I think that's absolutely critical. RJ, the Japan disaster is a tragic start to the year. Unfortunately, yes. I wish it weren't so, but it's. I just pray that there's the amount of casualties are limited. All right. Hindo, Happy New Year, folks. Happy New Year. Hindo, 25 likes. Yes, 25 likes. Very good. Yeah. Have them in your prayers. Pray that they overcome these adversities. And also, we had not exactly at the beginning of the year, but the tail end of the previous year, a tweet that I made. Well, it's not the tweet that's the story, but I tweeted about it. The floods in Urânia, but the floods had a silver lining. So there's major rains in the Northern Cape province at the moment, and these have the Orange River overflowing, bursting its banks, and Urânia suffered some flooding. But in the wake of many hateful thugs on social media, people that have never built anything in their life, celebrating the damage and the flooding in Urânia. The Uranians came out on the other side, squeaky clean, radiating of self confidence and pride and community. The community wasted no time to come together, mitigate the damage, prevent further damage, and fix the damage that was caused by the flooding. Now, that's a community. That's a community of self respect. That's a community that builds. That's a community that understands that their success is going to be determined not by some outside force, but by themselves. A community that knows the only savior, the only earthly savior outside of their heavenly Father is themselves, with the strength from God. There's an Afrikaans saying by J.D. Kestel that goes, "A volk red homself." A people or a nation saves itself. And the Urânia community demonstrated that a community saves itself, much to the frothing at the mouth frustration of people that can't even build a sandcastle. That was nice to see. So I take my metaphorical hat off to the people of Urânia for proving a point, proving a principle. It's very nice to see. Creating a reality. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're just tuning in, at the beginning of every year, I do an introductory episode discussing some of the themes and challenges ahead. And my co-host at this beginning of the year is always Kropi. Well, always sounds like I've done it for years. It's the second year. It's like a pedestrian mocking a cheap car. Absolutely. All right. Or some person that's never exercised in their life mocking the overweight person actually going to the gym and eating healthy. To come back to the theme of identity, I think in 2024, and I want to, like I said, I want to write more on matters of identity, but I want to write specifically on identity as an asset. So in 1997, Samuel Huntington wrote, "In the post-Cold War world, the most important distinctions among people are not ideological, political, or economic, they are cultural. People and nations are attempting to answer the most basic questions humans can face. Who are we?" And they are answering that question in the traditional way by referencing to those things that mean most to them. People define themselves in terms of ancestry, religion, language, history, values, customs, and institutions. They identify with cultural groups, tribes, ethnic groups, religious communities, nations, and at the broadest level, civilizations. People use politics not just to advance their interests, but also to define their identity. We know who we are only when we know who we are not, and often only when we know whom we are against. End quote. Here, Samuel Huntington is talking about identity as an asset. Those people that know who they are, where they come from, and where they're going are the people that persevere, that survive, that have petrol in their tank to be able to persevere. The peoples that don't have answers to those questions are the peoples that perish, the peoples that vanish into the pages of history. History has no patience for these types of people. And when it comes to identity as an asset, I'm going to be writing about it specifically, or what insights can be gained from historical examples, like, for example, the Voortrekkers, who one of their main reasons for trekking was to preserve their cultural identity, to preserve their community, because as they understood, identity and a sense of identity, a strong sense of identity, is an asset. That's what the Solidarity Movement and AfriForum understand as well. As Dirk Herman of Solidarity often says, when you try to be something for everyone, you end up being nothing for nobody. Let's see. I've been not keeping an eye on the chat. Gert Jansen van Rensburg. Conscious Caracal, please check the support of the Urânia project by Thomas Mabaso on the 360 experience. Criticizes the negative comments instead of learning from this. I'll have to check. Indo says, do smash the like button if you have not. Thank you very much, Indo. Pepper Peter Piper Pickled says, I just got here. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Peter. Sideline opinions. Globalism has no patience for identity. Absolutely. So Samora Machel, I think he was president of Mozambique, said that for the nation to live, the tribe must die. And I think you can take that quote, and if you extend it to globalism, then that quote would turn into, for the brotherhood of man to live, the nation or the peoples of the world must die. And I think that's the essence of it. That's what we need to resist. As MP van Wyk Lowe said, all the different cultures and languages of the world are different instruments in the orchestra of God. And if any of those cultures or languages were to perish, that's one less instrument in that orchestra. And we have to preserve that orchestra. And the globalists want to turn that orchestra into either a handful or a single instrument. Easier to control, easier to mold in any way you want. Yes, RJ says, identity allows one to stand for something, not just fall for everything. You know what a good place to start is in regards to identity? If you're unsure about the past of your people or your culture, look into the history of your family. Where does your father and your mother come from? Who were their fathers and mothers? And then you go back and back. What was your great-grandfather's profession? These types of questions. If you are blessed enough that your parents are still alive, ask them these questions, that you know them, because one day you might not be able to ask them those questions anymore. So ask them, what was the profession of my great-grandfather or great-grandmother? Or what were their personalities like? What were they known for? What type of people were they? You're going to find a lot of insights there. I think that's a very good place to start. Go into the family history of your surname. Where do the Van Sales come from? Who was the first Van der Merwe in South Africa? Who was the first Labushkachni in South Africa? Go look that up, and you might find some very interesting stuff. And that's a very good place to start in regards to identity as well. On the notes of identity, I made a tweet earlier this week, a post about the South Africans who constantly voice their frustrated bewilderment with why Afrikaners don't just go back to Europe. What are you doing? I think he's doing a little beak bath, preening his feathers. The South Africans that are like, why don't you just go back to Europe? I don't understand. I don't get it. Even when minority groups like Afrikaners or white South Africans are faced with discrimination, murderous chants, political marginalization, and other challenges in South Africa, these types of people reveal a core deficiency in themselves, a fundamental inability to grasp being culturally tied to a place, to the land, and being primarily driven by factors other than material well-being or wealth. These African nationalists, in very thick quotation marks, who claim to love Africa so deeply, could actually learn a thing or two from the stubborn Afrikaners if only they could find the humility to listen. And it's the strangest thing. People claim to be in love with Africa and they want to help Africa grow and prosper, and they're tied to the land. And then they encounter people like the Afrikaners that love Africa, that are tied to the land, that are tied to a place in Africa, that are stubbornly wanting to stay in that place that they love, and then they pretend or actually don't understand what they're seeing. They're like, what's going on? What's this? Why don't you just leave? Why are you staying behind? I don't get it. They voice their confusion. It's like someone claiming that Bob Dylan is their favorite artist. They love Bob Dylan's music. And then a Bob Dylan song comes up on the radio and they're like, who's this? Who's this singing here? Same with these, as I said, African nationalists who love Africa, have a deep tie to the soil and the land. When they encounter people that also have a deep tie to the land and who love Africa, and they are confused of like, why are you tied to this place? Or why not? No, actually worse, like, why are you tied? They don't even seem to be able to grasp that Afrikaners are tied to Africa. I was like, why are you still here? Why don't you just leave? If you don't like this discrimination and these chants like kill the Boer, why don't you just leave? It's the guy saying Bob Dylan is his favorite artist, but when Bob Dylan comes on the radio, when Bob Dylan's songs play on the radio, he's like, who's this? Wow. Whose voice is this? Very lucky. Not just interest. If you already have a lot of knowledge on it, you're very, very lucky. Keep growing that knowledge, though, and use the sources of knowledge that you have at your disposal. They might not always be there. All right. Let me just see here. Yeah. Something else that I think, well, firstly, there's not a prediction. I've already done it. So I've already started writing a piece on asymmetric defense strategies. So this is what to do basically when you're faced with a stronger opponent or opponent that is much more mighty than you. You just roll over and give up, or is there historical precedent that you can resist that type of opponent? I think there's a lot of historical precedent. Hey. And I use a lot of examples, like, for example, the Anglo-Boer War, and actually some history from the Basutus as well in South Africa. And the central point there, and I also use some inspiration from nature too, from animals like the porcupine and the badger that aren't afraid of lions or leopards, that can actually put up a fight and survive in a place that has lions and leopards and more powerful predators. And there's a lot to learn there, especially also the sociable weavers, the weaver birds that build those massive nests, the versamelvoëls. Roosters makes a very good point. He says African nationalists who have never stepped foot on the continent are a joke. The Afrikaners have been tied to the soil for centuries. Yeah, and if they know the song, speaking metaphorically, they should be able to recognize it immediately when they hear it. But no, they're confused when they hear the song that they claim to love so much. Yeah. Die voeltjie maak reg om te slaap, jongen, onder die kombers. Yeah, it's getting dark here now on the light because it's load shedding. I think he is getting a bit tired. But yeah, I'll put him to bed after the stream. I think he can stay awake for a few more minutes. Sideline Opinion says the history of the Afrikaner is a story of survival against all odds. Absolutely. And why I wanted to write about asymmetrical defense strategies is I've been wanting to write about it for a while. That's because sometimes I get this question when I post the things that we're building in South Africa, things that the Solidarity Movement and AfriForum are establishing, institutions like Soltech, academia, or neighborhood watches, or monuments, I sometimes get the comment or the question, what if it's all smashed? Or what if it's all taken away? What if a more powerful force, like the government, for example, comes and just destroys it? Short answer is, if that happens, you defend it. If they come to attempt to destroy or smash it, take it away, then you defend it. Like a porcupine defends itself, like a badger defends itself. The badger with his thick skin and the porcupine with his spikes. You need to be dynamic, adaptable, resilient. Building that resilience is critical, where we see that with, for example, the porcupine or the badger. They are highly resilient little animals that can survive attacks from much, much stronger predators. And they can land, even a porcupine can land a pretty, sometimes even deadly counterattack on a predator. If one of those spikes pierces a lung or blinds a predator. So I think that's also something that you can look forward to in regards. I'll make a video on it as well, or do a discussion stream on it as well, my asymmetric defense strategies piece. But I'm writing it in response to people that sometimes comment that, what if this happens? What if this happens? As Flip Base says, the only risk, the bigger risk than doing or trying something or trying an alternative solution is not doing anything, and accepting defeat, because then defeat is certain. And a town like Urânia, people tell the Uranians, or sometimes ask the Uranians, aren't you afraid that the government's going to come take everything or attack you or whatever? And they say, well, we're going to keep building, becoming more resilient. And that's what you do. You turn yourself or your community into a badger in a hole, and your opponent's going to have to try and get you out of that hole with their bare hands. It's not going to be pretty. There's this story that you often hear about a man in a bar fight, and there's like 10 oaks that jump him, a gang of 10 that attack this one man. And before they jump on him, he says, all right, we can fight, but I'm going to guarantee you one thing. You might kill me, and you certainly probably will kill me here today, but I can promise you one thing. One of you is going to lose his eyes in the process. And then they leave him alone, because nobody wants to be that guy. Oh, what the Iranians did. Well, I'm not there. I don't live there. I'm not a resident, but there's a lot of pictures. You should follow US Stradon, my good friend, and then also Harvey Snyman on X. They've got some great photographs of what was done. All right. Then just a little miscellaneous story that I wanted to talk about, and that's the Low House in Sutherland. So the Low House is a museum in the small Karoo town of Sutherland. It's the house where the Afrikaner philosopher that I talk about a lot, MP van Wyk Louw, one of the great Afrikaner thinkers or people were blessed with, him and his brother were born there. And I visited it last year when I was driving through the Northern Cape and the Karoo with my then my then fiance. Actually, on that trip, I asked her to marry me, and I drove we were staying in Calvinia, and I drove about 2.5 hours to Sutherland and back to visit that museum. And at the time, I was greeted devastatingly, heart-wrenchingly, by a sign on the door that said, sorry, due to vandalization, the museum is temporarily closed. And it broke my heart. But my heart's been lifted again today by reading the story that the museum is being restored and that it's being repaired. It warms my heart to read that. Gatskop Software, hallo Erns, voorspoed vir nuwe jaar. Wel, baie dankie Gatskop, ek waardeer dit opreg. All right. Also, if you have any guests that you want me to talk to in 2024, send me a suggestion. Also, my email address is on my channel. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can always send me an email there. Might not get back to you immediately, but I love reading all of, even if it's just feedback, even if you just want to tell me something about the show or my channel or something I've written or give me feedback, you can send me an email anytime. I'm glad. Well, we need to preserve our philosopher heritage. Sideliner opinions, and I know this is from the famous poem by Rudyard Kipling. If you can bear to hear, and I think that's where I'm going to end tonight's stream by reading. Maybe no, that's where I'm going to end tonight's stream. I'm going to read Rudyard Kipling's "If," and then I think that's a good way to end the stream. And then I'm going to say goodbye. All right. I don't know if you're all familiar with it. It's one of my favorite poems. Let me just see here if I can. Yeah, well, that's the best that I can do. All right. Yeah. So let's go. Let me just get it on screen. All right. If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, and if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you will be a man, my son. And that's the end of the poem. I hope that inspires you for 2024. And thank you very much for everyone that tuned in. Thank you for your comments and questions. And thank you for sharing these streams and leaving a like and just, the contributions of all of you lovely subscribers. If you sometimes miss me going live, you can ensure that you know when I go live by clicking that bell next to the subscribe button. That'll let you know when I go live. You can also follow me on Telegram. There's a link in the description. I post updates there. Keep up to date on what's going on by signing up there as well. And share this with people that you think will find it interesting. And next week, I'm not going to be live next Tuesday. I actually have a family member coming to visit. So in 2 weeks, I will have another show, and then it will be a weekly occurrence. Thank you very much for everyone. And also, if you're watching and it's no longer live, you can still take part in the conversation by going to the comments section and leaving all of your comments there. And I read all of them. I hope you all Have a productive and excellent 2024. Stay strong, stay resilient, support those that need it, especially the. Sorry about that. The battery of the Wi-Fi is done, so that means it's going to have to be the end, just in time. It's going to have to be the end of the stream as well. All right, cheers, guys. Have a good one. I hope you have an excellent rest of the evening. Great weekend, and go get this year. Be productive, build on that momentum, and I'll see you again real soon. Cheers, guys. Have a good one, and